From the outside looking in, it's easy to dismiss fan works as unimportant, creatively sterile, and overall lesser imitations of the source material. This goes doubly so for something like the Sonic franchise, which has had so many quality issues bouncing all over the range of good and bad, that for a while it was hard to remind people it used to be good and respected. Things have been a bit more positive lately, but the millstones of the past will always be hung around Sonic's neck, and there always will be an uphill climb for Sega with each game going forward. However, if you think about it, when fans point to the good characters, stories, and ideas of the official shows and comics from days of old and now in the movies, in the end, those were just fan creations made by teams given official status by decree of Sega. The Princess Sally and Freedom Fighters in the Sat AM cartoon and Archie Comics, Evil Supersonic and the Random Woodland Critters having names and characterizations in the Fleetway comics, Robotnik being skinny and somehow still working. Those are things the games never came up with or officialized. Yeah, except maybe Sonic Spinball and that one Sonic RPG, but those weren't directly made by Sonic Team. However, my stance is that anything can be a form of art or creativity, and while these two upcoming topics requested by viewer and commenter, The Epic, help reinforce that idea, I realize there's something a few of us may not realize when these kinds of fan-made or original projects are made, shared, and generally recognized. So in this video we'll look through a couple Sonic fan works, the fan film Sonic Villains, and the fan comic series Sonic Execution. So let's begin with Sonic Villains. Knock it off, we're doing Sonic Villains first and you can't change my mind. Sonic Villains is a fan film project animated and generally spearheaded by MeToons. Just from the trailer I found it interesting and something to look forward to, but the various things on their YouTube channel show there's more to the project and world building than just a trailer. Interviews, FAQs, behind the scenes stuff, and even a music playlist. And the more they talk and describe things, the more you realize they're actual fans. The kind that aren't afraid to recognize the faults, blemishes, and missteps Sonic has had over the years, and even celebrate and respect those missteps while trying to build off of them. Which brings us to what Sonic Villains is advertised as, and what it is beyond that. The story given is that Dr. Robotnik, Dr. Eggman, is gathering villains from... Actually, you know what? All things considered, I think it's best to show how MeToons describes it. And I do mean how he describes it. Because how MeToons and the rest of his team describe this project and what they share is a very positive way to get people invested in this project in one form or another.
I have arrived.
Hi, MeToon. Yay!
Hello there, MeToons. Hello.
Salutations, everybody. My name is Aryan Rashad. I go by MeToons pretty much everywhere. I'm the director, writer, lead artist. I voice a bunch of characters.
I voiced Dr. Eggman, obviously, our big bad, and I will be using the mysterious Phantom Ruby Gem to gather villains across the whole multiverse to take down that blue pest once and for all.
So Dr. Eggman is going to get villains from other dimensions, and as you noticed, MeToons is really spot on with the voice. The other voice actors are incredible as well, however, as the Ask the Eggman Empire video proved back in November of 2020. And quite frankly, I think it also gives a great look at what the style, humor, and audio presentation will be like, as well as how great these actors work together.
At Game Reel 2 asks, who of these villains is your favorite and why? I guess everybody could answer this question if they want to.
I must say I relate most to Sleet's struggles with working intimately with the troubled superiors and cohorts. And I've never met a robot with such sharp-witted intellect. You're quite an impressive piece of machinery, Mr. Orbot. Let's have a drink sometime. Motor oil and child-inappropriate beverages on me. Consider it a date, my mechanical compadre.
Or, I think the robots Nuggies and Rosie are pretty nice. I was playing fetch with him earlier, and I had a ripper good time. So that's how that tree made it in here.
This chick? Hi! This chick right here? She's my girl. I freaking love her!
Right back at you, girlfriend!
She's a total loose cannon, and she tells the funniest jokes.
I burned down 60 village houses for target practice before being pulled into this Q&A! Yay!
See? She's perfect!
I think I'm going to be sick.
That wasn't the full answer for the question, though. I entirely recommend watching it yourself, and just about everything else on the project's channel. Point being made in sharing that is that even when they're just answering questions, they're able to create stories and bring life to their characters naturally and believably. As someone who enjoys classic radio shows like Dragnet, Gunsmoke, Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar, I recognize that there's a difficulty in having an audio-only format and making it come across as something that you can actually envision in your mind or feel completely taken into. And while that video was exclusively for the villains, there's storyboard animations here and there showing the expected scenes and voice acting from the hero characters as well. Here's a storyboard from the interview video I showed earlier.
Just no asking me and my boys about how much money a detective agency is making. That is strictly classified information.
None whatsoever.
Oh, come on, guys, I'm your boss! The least you could do is make me look good in front of the dang multiverse!
Us government agents aren't really supposed to spill the beans in our ops to just anybody, hon.
Nothing personal, just business.
GUN believes that I am not good at keeping secrets. This is a falsehood. I have only informed Shadow and Rouge that the commander's wife took his kids in the divorce.
You're a steel trap, Omega.
Steel wishes it were as strong as me.
Psh, I could take you on, you dumb badnik.
But hey, I'm game. I mean, what GUN doesn't know won't hurt him, right?
And on the channel, they also have a short clip of Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Techno the Canary, a character from the Fleetway Publications version of the Sonic comic book series. All in all, even if we don't get the fan film, there's a lot they've already released to help build up the world and lore they're creating, to make it feel like we're not waiting for a film to be released, we're on a journey to the film's release. And I do mean world building.
So we talked a little bit about Starla and Muna, our two pop idol characters for our film. You know, they'll have their own little social media presence. We want to kind of treat them as if they were actual pop stars in their own real kind of setting. So if you if you know Gorillaz, or if you follow the League of Legends scene and you know KDA.
Oh hey, I think I know what song KDA did. Sorry, I had to share that one. They have some videos and music from Comet on the channel, and as MeToons said, there's a Twitter page for them as well. They even have a lo-fi playlist that brings DJ Professor K from Jet Set Radio into the mix. And as many comments pointed out on that video, it gives more than just music, but also a look into a non-adventure day for Sonic and the people in his world. However, speaking of music, I want to take a moment to bring up one of the earliest composers for the project, Stephen the By Myself Neville. I better be getting that name right. Bits of the song he made for the project, titled Villains, is heard regularly, and he has a YouTube page full of more music he's made. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2021. MeToons made sure to dedicate the project to him and made a speed paint video in his memory. And I hope you'll allow this moment of remembrance for him, as I share a portion of the video that, frankly, hasn't been seen enough on the channel compared to the other videos, and should be seen, not just as a memoriam from MeToons for Steven, but also for something that was in the comments. At this point in time, I like to put forward a question that this and just about any other fan work out there is going to have to find itself answering. Do you have to understand the source material, partially or fully, in order to enjoy the fan work? That's difficult to answer without the fan film actually being released, but MeToons is on record as saying that they will make sure time is given to introduce the universes and characters before things get rolling in the plot of the movie. And the pre-release stuff, especially the Ask the Eggman Empire video, does help give an understanding of things, even if one or two of the characters are exaggerated a bit from their normal portrayals. For instance, I know nothing about Sonic Underground, Sonic.exe, or Sonic Boom, but the discussions between the villains seems to cover most of the bases pretty well during that video.
It's simple. Dingo is sensitive to the energy of Chaos Emeralds. Without them, he transforms into a blob of unlimited power. With this remote control, created by yours truly, he remains stabilized and available to transform into anything I need him to.
So, a motorbike?
Yes.
An airplane?
Yes.
A pile of organs?
Aren't most of us?
A goblin?
Yes.
A really ugly goblin.
I literally just said anything.
A VHS of my favorite show?
A bucket of chicken.
A promotion?
A statue of our lovely Dr. Robotnik?
A daughter that actually loves her father.
A super long and fancy top hat?
A better boss?
I heard that.
How about I transform him into a giant hand that'll slap you all till you shut the heck up? Yes, he can transform into anything. In fact, why don't we try out a few of those suggestions for ourselves right now?
Don't I get a say in any of this? No! Oh, blimey.
And in case you're wondering, Dark Oak from Sonic.exe is the one that seems to be exaggerated the most. While there's going to be plenty of action scenes, the focus of the project is to have fun and give representation to nearly all of the Sonic media that's out there. For example, Rosie and Scourge were actual threats in the Archie comics, with Scourge actually ruling over a kingdom. But that doesn't stop their interactions with each other from being a constant source of hilarity.
At the All Creator asks, to Rosie, when is your and Scourge's wedding?
God help me.
Today!
Wait, what? No, this is crazy. You're crazy, this internet guy is crazy, and the only way we're doing this is over my dead body.
Come to Mama.
Screw this, I'm out of here.
He's getting away!
Crystallize his legs!
You all suck!
You can't escape love, Scourgy! It's infectious! Infectious!
Shouldn't we put a stop to any of this, boss?
Are you crazy? We've got front row seats to dinner and a show. Somebody make us some popcorn. I'm on it.
Okay, so at this point I think it's safe to say that this is a very promising project as a whole, and I'm really excited to see more of what they're up to. MeToons has a website listing the characters, better organization for the video clips, and background of all the villains. There's no info for the heroes, but maybe that's coming later. Honestly, the website is functional and a useful resource, but I get the idea that MeToons, or whoever is in charge of it, has their focus on other things in the project, or real life, and just haven't been able to update it as other priorities are pulling the ball over the place. MeToons started this whole thing after not getting accepted to Cal Arts after all, and while I haven't come across anything myself, I wouldn't doubt he has to hold down a job and take care of other sources of furthering education and skills. Same is true for most of the others, I'm sure. However, this is definitely a project that will further their goals in the industry, or even outside of it. MeToons can put animator on his resume, but he can also put down in charge of managing a large team efficiently.
But as far as any large-scale thing, I feel like I'd want to just kind of move on to working on Sonic stuff officially in any capacity, you know? I've been trying to kind of sneakily figure out, okay, how do I get into IDW so I can work on those comics?
If you guys need a recommendation, as far as a random nobody on YouTube can give one, here's mine. Sega and whoever else is out there should definitely give you guys a chance to address Sega directly, and in general, other developers and studios out there, you have hired fan modders in the past to work on Sonic CD, Sonic Mania, and Sonic Origins. If you've been having trouble generating interest with the newer stuff you've been coming out with, then maybe teams like this are the ones you should be taking note of if they're getting interest on them more than you. And I will point out that the official Sega channel does have a clip interviewing MeToons, asking him what made him a fan of Sega games. They know this team exists. And take notice that they're working with Tia Ballard, an established voice actress, and this little tidbit from when he was discussing the Comet Music Group.
Muna has a character voice actress and a singing voice. Her singing voice is Joy Ofodu. Incredible actress on her own, and she has a beautiful singing voice. Her character actress is Empress Layla, who I think is actually with us in the server right now. Hey, Layla! They're both absolutely incredible, and I knew they both inspired me so much. I had to bring them on. And Starla is voiced by Lizzie Freeman. You will know her as Enna in Joel G's web series on YouTube. She's Trish from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. She's voiced a lot of incredible anime characters, and she just came to us. She just basically said, like, hey, my clients have been for Sega, Nintendo. You know, I'm in Genshin Impact. They're like, wait, what? What? Oh, okay. Hi.
Let me replay that in case you missed it.
And she just came to us. She just basically said, like, hey, my clients have been for Sega, Nintendo. You know, I'm in Genshin Impact. They're like, wait, what? What? Oh, okay. Hi.
This fan project allows nearly everyone working on it to be able to put on their resumes or portfolios that they have worked with either industry professionals or people with direct connection to the industry. And they are showing that, unlike some other fan projects out there, this one is going to be completed and finished. I genuinely look forward to what they have in store. And there are a few things that I've passed over, so let me backtrack a little and go over them real quick. A question and discussion during the interview focused on a fan project to remake Sonic 2006. You know, that one. I think it's best to let the clip from the interview describe it, because if what they said got me interested, then maybe you should hear what I heard.
If you guys go over to Chaos X's Twitter, they are basically recreating the levels of Sonic 06 to probably one of the craziest and coolest degrees I think I've ever seen. Because what they're doing is they're adding intro animations to levels that never actually had those. You know, graphically things are upscaled. The controls seem tighter, less glitches. Obviously, it just seems like a really cool revitalization of all the levels that 06 had, and just kind of cleaning them up, I guess, and just kind of making them a little more, I guess, what the game was originally trying to be, so to speak. I think it's really, really cool what they're doing. I wish them the best of luck, because they've made so much great progress already. I think the recent update they had was like an intro animation to Silver and Blaze's Crisis City level. I thought that was gorgeous. That was so beautiful how it transitioned from them kind of floating and falling into the level, kind of nodding, and then you take control of them as if you were playing the game normally. I thought that was so cool. And it adds so much story to the game in smaller little ways that I think are really, really cute. I'm interested in seeing what they do with the Elise-based stuff. You know, where Sonic kind of has to carry Elise around, because I know that stuff was kind of, I guess that stuff was kind of a little janky, I guess. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do with that. I wish them the best of luck.
Hashtag let Elise walk.
I don't care if she's too slow. Sonic can just grab her by the hand. Don't worry if your hand falls off.
And let's hope we don't see the kiss again.
I'll also use that to bring up the fact they are going to have Princess Elise in Sonic films as well. And I like what they've said and shown for her so far. Not hard compared to how she was in the game, but just because it's easy doesn't mean there shouldn't be an effort put into it. And this project is bursting at the seams with effort.
I kind of wrote Elise afterwards around what we were trying to do with her. You know, she's Sonic's human best friend here. You know, the original timeline where, you know, they kissed is no longer a thing. Because I know that's something. You can't kiss a cartoon animal, but you'll accept Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit. So what's going on there, huh? Anyway, you're not gonna get into that. But yeah, so you know they're just great friends, and her friendship with Sonic allows her to see the world in a way that she can't, just because she's royalty, and you know both her parents are gone, and she's just been thrust into this, you know, role that she really couldn't have possibly prepared for, and she wants to live life the way she sees her friends do, you know, going on adventures and fighting evil and stuff like that. You know, even though she loves what she does, she loves, you know the kingdom she's protecting and everything. But it can be scary and lonely for her.
That's really the major point I'm trying to find a way to segue into. This fan project makes me want to see shows, comics, games, everything they mention. You can't try out for Blaze the Cat, I'm sorry. Because even if they're using the characters differently, they catch my attention and stick in my mind. The fan film is effectively a better advertisement for Sonic than the marketing teams at Sega have been. And they do this while having to tackle the Herculean effort of keeping the various alternate canons and lore in place. I say Herculean not just because this is decades of Sonic history across at least 3 countries, but as those years have gone by, it seems Sonic Team and Sega have forgotten, retconned, or outright ignored their own stories, lore, and canon that they're in direct control of. I'm finding myself at this point trusting the fans more than Sega and Sonic Team to make a coherent and logical story with their franchise. Sorry, that was a little bit of ranting. I do implore everyone, though, to watch this film when it comes out and give it a chance. And even beyond that, go to their YouTube channel currently and just follow along and see how everything's coming up, and their behind the scenes, their interviews, the FAQs, the stuff they're releasing on Twitter. Even interviews and panels are entertaining because these are legitimately entertaining people. And there are some other interesting surprises that you can see for yourself on the channel that I haven't been talking about, including the appearance of another character that Sonic has worked with in the past. Again, I'm not going to say anything, I'll make it your own surprise, but let's just say this is one hater the fandom won't mind having around. Let's see, was there anything else I forgot to bring up before we go on?
Holy crud!
What appears to be the trouble, furry wolf man?
Are you blind, woman? The green robot is chewing on my leg! Boss, please, we have to do something!
You're right, Orbot. Not only are Tweedledee and Tweedledum acting up, but so are all my monitors. Quickly, let's end this Q&A on a high note so it looks like we've got everything under control.
Yes, to the surprise of many at the time, Sonic.exe will have a part to play, and he is going to be different from the usual portrayals of the creepypasta or variant and inspired creations and stories. In fact, I really like the direction they're taking with him.
So many souls to play with, so little time, wouldn't you agree?
I'll say, don't you just wish you could keep the pain going for as long as superhumanly possible?
Oh, definitely my destructive accomplice. Corrupting the circuits of those idiot robots was far too easy. But then again, an idle mind is the devil's playground, isn't it?
Again, let's give a few minutes for MeToons to describe it himself. Because what he describes here is not only a good explanation of why they included him and what kind of plans they have for him, but also a great example of the reputation Sonic.exe and similar creepypastas have with most people.
Okay.
So my question was, because I've noticed the cast, very good, but also very surprised that Sonic.exe is in it. What was the idea behind that? I'm very curious to know.
yes. Sonic.
That's a good question, because that was something that was something I was curious about.
yeah. It's
Right,
the thing.
exactly. Like, you wouldn't see Sonic.exe very often in, like, a Sonic film. Like, that's crazy.
It's the thing that everybody kind of looks at and they're like, wait, what? Okay, you have all these canon guys and then you just have this one fan character in here? Okay.
yeah, exactly.
But so my rationale behind him being here was I wanted to, the fandom in itself has so many incredible characters. There are so many great characters within the fandom that they themselves have created on their own. And, I feel like as a fan myself, I felt like, well, why don't we kind of pay homage to them too? We have some canon stuff and then maybe one fan related thing. I had in my head a few ideas about maybe who to pick. I said this in one FAQ video on our channel already, but I had thought maybe we can ask Chakra X about Nazo being included. But the more the story just kind of developed, it just didn't feel like it made too much sense because he felt way too overpowered. Again, it's the power scaling thing of like, how do we make sure that there's a level playing field so where one character can't just mop the floor with everybody without the assistance of anybody else. So Sonic.exe just made the most sense because he had been around for a long time. He's probably one of the biggest creepypasta characters, point blank period, next to Slenderman and the others.
Yeah.
He started basically a whole genre of haunted video game in garage sale. Do not buy this. Just kidding. It's free. Oh, wait, it's hacking into your mainframe. And now the character's coming out of the screen and he is going to murder you. Oh no. How did I write this scary story if I'm dead? No one knows. But,
magic.
The spirit wrote it. The author's spirit wrote it. Don't worry about it. He can touch pencils. It's fine. So Sonic.exe just felt like it made the most sense. But again, power scaling. In the original creepypasta, he just seemed kind of almost deity-esque. He literally says in the game, I am God. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it just felt like, okay, this doesn't really feel right for a Sonic thing. This doesn't really feel too palatable for a Sonic thing that's trying to feel authentic to the games or to the source materials. So we needed to kind of tone him down a little bit, number one. Number two, we had to kind of take his godly powers away. So I figured, okay, what if he was a creation of Eggman himself, as opposed to just some unknown demonic entity summoned through overly religious means that didn't really feel too right for Sonic anyway. So him just being an actual executable file, like his creepypasta suggests. Just felt like it made sense. He's a virus with a god complex. He thinks he's a god, not really. He's just very good at hacking into your system and forcing you to play his little games. He's like a Sonic jigsaw.
And with Sonic.exe now entering the picture, I suppose now's a good time to talk about the second project. The fan comic Sonic Execution. Now you might think with how MeToons described it, the only way Sonic.exe could be taken seriously is by using it as a joke. This next project, however, would like to change that perception. If you see my previous video on Sonic.exe, I mentioned there's unironic fans of the creepypasta. Generally the idea and premise, if not the story itself. Some have gone on to make their own EXE-style creations, or their own fan expansions of the story. And as I said in that video, in different mediums, stories, or creating different villains, There's a lot of potential and interesting ideas that can be presented with just the basic starting point of something with the Sonic franchise but evil or horrifying. And they can be scary with just the concept behind the characters. Sonic Execution is a fan comic series that apparently had one idea: show these various villains and characters unleashed from being only in the realm of haunted video games, and depict them as the monsters they truly are when fully manifested. As the main writer says, he wants the "I am God" comment to have legitimate horror and gravitas behind it. Now, instead of X from the original Sonic.exe creepypasta, the team behind Sonic Execution is using Lord X from the PC port game as the main villain. Lord X is a terrible entity from the void that existed before existence and between dimensions, which the Sonic Execution team has a presentation of how universes work in the comic story that fits pretty close to the idea Sonic Villains is using. I'm not accusing plagiarism, I'm more pointing out they're taking the time to establish rules for the comic, which is more than can be said for even official publications and movies. Lord X came across Sonic's world and possessed him because Sonic was a powerful entity in his world. Lord X is also an egotistical plotter and very much eager to play games with his victims, which may give another reason for wanting to possess Sonic inside his own game. It's suggested in official canon for the character that Lord X actually exists outside the games, and only enters into them to play with the trapped souls of his victims. Now, once again, the ever-popular official Supersonic character from Fleetway Comics is showing up. And you presumably noticed he was in Sonic Villains as well, but I waited to bring him up here because of how his powers are used in the fan comic. Specifically, Supersonic having the power and ability to destroy worlds is mostly within the official portrayals of him, or at least the threat level he gives off in his home with the Fleetway Comics. However, there are differences. Postings on Twitter share a legitimately tragic story of Tails trying to create an antidote to the chaos radiation that was starting to afflict Sonic, and the progression of Supersonic awakening and eventually destroying his friends and his world. After an attempt at being subjugated by EXE, possession, or corruption, he discovered that there were other universes he could destroy and gleefully set out to do so. So once more, multiverses. And when any of the other Sonic dimensions are shown thus far, the comic attempts to emulate the art styles of those games, shows, or comics. Now generally, Sonic Execution is doing some things that Sonic Villains is also doing, taking the official and canon representations of the characters and worlds and portray them faithfully in a multiversal story. The difference being, Sonic Execution is focusing more on fan-created characters and the canon tied to them, though still trying to keep the vanilla canon and stories the same until paths are crossed and events play out. Judging what's said in their Twitter posts and comments, the idea they're going with is there's so many EXE stories and creations because they each have their own dimension and they can access our world, presumably others as well, using cartridges and consoles as portals of a sort. So that gives us where things are starting from. Now where are they going to go? The current story is in the middle of the second issue of Chaos Emerges. It's mostly focused on Supersonic resisting the attempts of Lord X to capture him by using an army of all the other EXE characters Lord X is in control of. And I need to say that the first page sold me on this comic. Bring it on, you blood-crying bastards. We don't just get a setup for a giant melee, but the very first thing Supersonic does is roast all these guys like they're at the Friars Club. Most of what we'll be seeing is action or fighting scenes between Supersonic and the evil X's, not those ones, and they do a good job with the art. A lot of the scenes might be pretty busy, but they still give attention to detail, and they make an effort to ensure you can see things clearly enough. The Chaos Emerges comics so far are an introduction to the powers and dangers of the antagonists, though if the only thing you were looking at were the released comic pages, you've yet to see any of the heroic Sonic characters. Though there is one protagonist we get a glimpse at, we'll come back to him. Meanwhile, we get to see the consequences and casualties of the battle raging through entire dimensions that are torn apart in their wake. The focus is given to the Sonic.exe dimension, where after everything is destroyed and Sonic's dying gaze falls upon the void, he begins turning into the comics version of a character named Leech, which is a character originally made by Kaiser Cola, and I wouldn't have known any of that information without the Twitter comments and replies, and then later on fill in the blanks with the Sonic Oddities wiki. With that in our minds, let's allow the plot to rest for a while and have a bit of a discussion. Now, like one of my favorite comics, Kingdom Come, you don't necessarily need to know who all the various characters are to enjoy and understand the story that's being presented. But if the goal is to open up and share the fan community with more people on the outside, then we need more to go on than just asking, hey, who's that evil Sonic over there, third from the left? I recognize about 3 of them, and that's only because they were connected to the Friday Night Funkin' mod that I talked about earlier. However, just from those handful that I know about, I can say with certainty that if you don't know who some of these monsters and creations are, you are missing out on some truly interesting, inventive, scary, and creepy stories and ideas. The creators of the comic have at least twice reached out to see if any creators or owners want to have their .exe or Sonic Creepypasta characters featured in the comic, and not just the ones that they have a personal preference to or think are popular. They want to share as much of the community as they can with everyone, and they want to do it in a way that shows how monstrous and villainous these characters can truly be, and even made a side comic to include joke characters, as well as what I presume are less powerful or less malicious characters. However, while I see a lot of people in the comments recognize various EXEs, I'm generally lost about who all these guys are. For instance, someone in the comments mentioned this thing is actually a crazier version of Metal Sonic that killed his version of the real Sonic, but was so deluded that he was real and not a robot that he wears Sonic skin. If you want to poke around and see what else is out there, the Sonic Oddities wiki site really helps catalog the various characters and stories. And if you get inspired and follow the rules, you can even submit your own creations there, like an EXE SCP site. But all that leads to the point that if you're only going off the comic that's been posted so far, you might not be getting a reason to stick around for more when you don't know the interesting bits the others may know about. And it's legitimately difficult to get people to give something a chance when the main draw into it is the fighting, the horror, etc., and not realizing that there might be more behind it. For example, if all you knew about the Danganronpa games was it was a bunch of people guaranteed to murder each other off and skipped it for that reason, you'd miss the fact that it has some of the strongest writing out there that not just covers other topics, themes, and scenarios, but makes you really care about who lives, dies, and does what. And there is a little bit of that in the Sonic Execution comic. Therefore, I'll point out here that in my opinion, without knowing much about what the background is for the various bad guys, this is a comic worth sticking to. I see nothing that suggests they'll disrespect the reader's time, and various postings on Twitter make it clear there is an effort to have decent characterizations and keep interest in what they do. And a lot of those posts give us a look at what their plans are for the heroes of the story. We haven't seen how they come together yet, but there have been artwork and snippets of stories shared about the freedom fighters of the multiverse. And surprisingly, I find even the basic Sonic character interesting in this setup. Game Sonic, as the team labels him, is effectively the normal Sonic character seen in the canon games, with only the powers and abilities he's shown in those games, which means he'll have to face down eldritch horror gods wearing his face in what sounds like a comparatively limited fashion. Boom Sonic from the Sonic Boom series has been mentioned as well, but more recent posts show the Sonic Boom version of Amy Rose on the team as well. The rest of the team, however, is where we start seeing what kind of ideas the writing has in store for us. So let's meet the rest of the good guys, or at least good enough guys, and see what kind of hints for the future of the comic they give to us. So let's start with one of the more explicitly unique characters to this team, Dr. Doom. Okay, sorry, the team heard that one enough as it is in the comments, but nobody seems to actually be throwing shade at the character, and his creator appears to be taking it all in stride. This is the Revenant, and unlike Dr. Doom, he doesn't mind taking off his mask. He's also half Japanese and half Middle Eastern descent, so the robes and Oni mask make sense with his heritage. He has about 3 different short stories of history and backstory shared in the Twitter posts, and the Revenant's creator, the Revenant, has put a lot of thought into the character. Legitimately, he could write full-blown books about his adventures from what I've seen. Hero of another story type thing here. The short version, and I do sincerely suggest looking up the actual stories they posted for him, is that since the age of 12, the Revenant's universe and home village was invaded and destroyed by monsters that were previously exiled into the void. He spent 4 years traveling, training, and fighting with a group of survivors before things began going downhill, with Mercy killing his best friend, his lover sacrificing herself to protect him, and then finally, the straw that broke the camel's back was his attempt to defend a village, but failing miserably. His anger, bitterness, and wrath over such a colossal failure that cost so many lives caused an unexpected power to awaken within him. The outburst of power from the awakening burned everything around him, and when he woke up from the event, he found himself in a new universe. If I'm understanding things correctly, it's in this universe that he began crossing paths with EXEs, and began a quest of revenge against them. There's also artwork of the Revenant being in a superhero group, but I'm not sure if that's the group he traveled and trained with, or a different one from before or even after the Execution comic. It's also important to point out that, in line with his backstory, he's very focused on being a protector as much as a vengeful force against evil, if his argument with Shadow in this preview art is any indication. However, it's also giving the nuance that his actions in protecting civilians may also be frightening them at the same time. So he honestly does sound interesting. Shadow. This version of Shadow comes from a universe where he was nearly killed by Entity 666, and only survived by using the Chaos Emeralds to transport to another universe. In the process, he lost an arm and had it replaced with one made of chaos energy, and I'd assume he's a lot like his game character in that he's pragmatic about getting the job done and doesn't suffer fools lightly. If you're on the outside of the Sonic fandom, and even inside it, you'd be right to assume Shadow started off as Hedgelord the Hedgehog. However, the ending of his debut game, Sonic Adventure 2, and his time in Sonic 06, and probably one of the few positives that game had, show actual character development and growth out of and away from that. He's got moments of being dark and brooding still, but when written and used properly, it's because that's how he started, instead of how he'll always be. Ah, Silver. My only actual exposure to Silver is the Sonic 06 game, and you can have him remade by fans into a cross-eyed hedgehog that only moves around on a crooked pogo stick and attacks by smashing symbols together like a wind-up monkey, and I would still think it was a better character than what I remember playing in that game. Emphasis on remember. I can't think of anything truly memorable about his character in the game, other than he was yet another character in the series that would have been a good guy from the start, if he wasn't part of the ever-growing Mistook Sonic for Evil club. Now, he may have had character development in the games I haven't played, but I honestly didn't care for him enough that when the games came out, I went to look. So, take how low a bar that all sets for my opinion, and compare it to the statement that I am legitimately intrigued and curious to see how Sonic Execution's version of Silver gets used and how the story goes. Again, the fan creations are making me more interested in characters than the official portrayals. To start with, it's a Silver from a different dimension where Silver is female, wears clothes, and shows emotions. She still has telekinetic powers and hurls things around with her mind, and presumably other similar powers. She's also stated to be the heart of the team, and starts off naive and timid, but gains courage and becomes a silver lining to the future. Quoted verbatim from main writer DevArts, but those two sentences make me believe they put more thought into her character than Sega did for... Let me just stop that. Anyway, you notice there's also a mention of a prophecy involving anti.dll in there. What's that about? Well, it looks like she's slated to get godly powers tied to a creation in the EXE community, or at least a creation related to it, known as anti-Sonic.dll. This character was created and even modded into Sonic Generations by Potter and Matrix fan, and is described as just as insane as X, but does things for a good cause. Not the only good guy EXE that's appeared over time, and his creator actually didn't make much story for him other than seeing it as an interesting idea to do, but the mod makes me want to play Generations a little more, and the integration of his character into the comic with how interesting Silver is sounding overall is definitely keeping me engaged with the project even more. However, there's one more character revealed to be involved that didn't so much as get my attention or surprise me for a big EXE crossover like this, but I did become eager to see their plans play out with them. Needle Mouse. In my Sonic.exe video, I only gave a cursory look into the series this character is from. Since then, I've seen most of the videos and have to say, this still is one of my favorites, if not the favorite of the EXE creations. To recap, the spirit of a woman accidentally killed by her friends and then buried in a lake possesses an unreleased Sonic game when Sega builds a factory over her resting place. She then uses the game to get revenge on her former friends by killing them in the real world, then trapping their souls in the game as the various characters. I really liked what I saw of it up to that point, but had to leave it alone for a while as various obligations and responsibilities pulled me away or distracted me from getting back to it. But to this day, I feel like the Needle Mouse series, and by extension, The Vengeful Ghost of Sarah Henderson, are one of the best ideas and stories in the Sonic.exe fandom. So what are they doing with her in the comic, and why am I discussing her in the good guy team? Sarah is, so far, revealed to be stuck in her own universe, unable to go anywhere else, and presumably has to use the Needle Mouse form to do anything outside her literal bubble. Now, if I'm putting things together properly, she's going to wind up corrupted by Lord X at some point. Not surprising, considering he's kind of corrupting or controlling all the other EXEs as well. However, she's going to break free somehow, and the notes on this sketch for her says she's preferring to be in her human form since she hated what she was before, though some of her EXE power is still there for her to use, and she comes in possession of the Revenant's Scarf. I'm not telling you what that one bit I blurred out is. Check out the Twitter yourself for that, and plenty of other surprises I'm keeping a lid on. Like with the other previews, though, this is once again something that the team is looking to expand on what made the characters unique or interesting, and give them a presence in the comic beyond, well, that's a popular character, so they're expected. Sonic games themselves seem to have fallen into that trap a number of times, where they keep throwing in the characters that have appeared previously, and in the end they're just there with not much being used from them, making them feel superfluous. Unfortunately, if you want to see the actual Needle Mouse series yourself and find out why it's in character for Sarah to hate what she was before, the creator of the series, ShutUpJoJo, privated the videos and rebooted the series to head in a different direction with a different antagonist after dealing with creator burnout. I do hold hope that ShutUpJoJo will let us see the videos on his channel again, though, because even though the series is re-uploaded by others and still viewable, I would very much prefer that he get the views instead of others. It's his creation after all, and even if he doesn't like it anymore for whatever reason, it's still something that can bring him more support for his other projects, current and future. But I understand that. Burnout, disillusion with the whole thing, wanting to move on, lots of reasons people don't want to have past works reflect on their current or future projects, plans, and life. In fact, this is something that happens quite a few times in the EXE fan community, for better or worse. And you've seen me touch on some of this in my first Sonic.exe video. The characters change owners, or the creators just don't want the characters to be around anymore, and ask people not to use them or associate them with the creations anymore. And it appears to be a general policy, not just on the Sonic Oddities wiki, but in the community in general, that if creators don't want their things used or shared anymore, then they comply. A major instance of this is Xenophanes, who I first talked about in the previous Sonic.exe video. Back then, I mentioned what I understood the lore of Xenophanes to be back then, and may have been the official lore at the time. Now, as time went on, Xenophanes was made a separate canon character before the owner of him decided they didn't want him to be a canon character anymore, making the evil Sonic in the FNF mod retroactively not connected to X anymore at all, but just Xenophanes in the mod's canon in a faker disguise, and as far as I understand it, completely divorced from whatever canon there was for the official Xenophanes and X himself as well. I think I made that confusing, so to simplify, because of the creator not wanting to have Xenophanes be canon anymore, Xenophanes is no longer the real transformation of X, and Xenophanes in the game is now a separate version of Xenophanes that is not the original Xenophanes. And if your head is hurting from all that, here's one last thing I came across for just a bit of fun. The Sonic.exe fandom was not only recognized by Sega themselves, but the fandom then officially recognized Sega as owning a canon version of Sonic.exe. All from this picture Sega posted on Twitter. After some of the corporate lawyer attack dog stuff I've seen, it's nice to see a company actually play along a little and let the fans have their fun. Ironic that a creepypasta is what gives me a spark of hope for Sega, even if there's no reasonable expectation they'd go any further than a reference. Now, if you head to their Twitter page and think it's a bit rough trying to read the comic there, I'll give you an alternative. What has been called by the team the definitive dub of the comic over on Sega Girl 101's YouTube channel. Currently, she has the Lord X Origins and First Chaos Emerges comic, as well as a pile of other comic dubs and content. I can see why it was declared the definitive version. The voice actors are doing a great job.
There you are!
Fleetway and Lord X sound very believable in their voices. The emotions and inflections to the voices sound overall natural.
Tails, what's happening? The entire world is falling apart!
I'm not sure. Oh no! The energy readings are off the charts! It's tearing everything apart!
All in all, she and the others she's working with are worthy of attention and support. I'm, unfortunately, going to say that I'm not sure if it's as high a caliber as Sonic villains, although I do think their Fleetway is portrayed better. But they're all giving a damn strong showing and hot on the heels of them. In the end, the comic is at a point where it not just has to share a good story with interesting characters as it goes on, but also has to help people take notice of why EXEs have a fan community. And I am hopeful and positive on their ability to do that. A comic that by reading it we can go, oh, so that's why the fans like this stuff or like that character. After looking around and thinking over things, I feel like Sonic.exe, and a lot of the other variants, work well, or at least better, in visual mediums where they can more clearly show how scary they look and what kind of powers they use instead of risking things being lost in words alone. Think back to MeToons' description of the creepypasta, and you'll have an idea of what the general view was for EXE-style characters or stories, even in the Friday Night Funkin' mod. But there's a reason people keep getting inspired to make new ones, write their own stories, or even just make mods or unofficial continuations of things. There's a lot of potential in the ideas, even if the earliest exposures to it weren't that great. And I think that's just about it for Sonic Execution, so let's... What do you mean there was an update? Okay, so Sonic Execution had a few updates on their Twitter page while I was working on the video, so let me just say here, this is why you should definitely subscribe to and follow both projects and anybody else you might have an interest in, because, well, sometimes things get moving fast. So after 2 comics of being chased around, eventually Super Sonic is actually worn down enough that he is finally captured by Lord X's minions. Witnessing this was apparently Sonic, the Zone Cop. Sonic is a character from the Archie comics continuities, and is effectively a multiversal observer and officer. And it appears that he's going to be the one that brings together all the heroes for Sonic Execution. I now return myself to the finishing of my video. If they stay the course on this comic and give us the characters, characterization, and story that they've been hinting at and inferring, they keep the presentation good, they don't get lazy with the writing and other things that can be screwed up, it can become a very good comic, not just as a Sonic.exe comic, but a good comic in general. And it's hard to describe, but it feels natural and right for Sonic.exe stuff to be in a comic format like this. And to bring together Sonic Villains and Sonic Execution at the end here, both projects are doing something commendable, which is making things available for everybody to see from the get-go and being open about development processes, ideas, what the story is or might be going forward. By sharing the goals and ideas that they're working toward with this, it not just brings in the attention of people that come across it or are told to take a look at it, but it also keeps their anticipation fresh. And in some cases, knowing what the full story is, knowing what the surprises might be, or coming up with ideas of your own in your head for what they might be, that builds the anticipation that brings people to stick around and see how things play out. It's kind of like going to a restaurant and you smell the food coming out of the kitchen before it gets to your table. Everybody I've talked about in this video is worth taking a look at, including the side projects that were mentioned in passing. All of you, Sonic Villains, Sonic Execution, and Project 06, Sega Girl 101, everybody else I may not have mentioned in that, all of you are doing a good job so far. And take as much time as you need to keep doing a good job. After all, Sonic's the only one here that's gotta go fast. Ow!